Hello YouTube, I'm Darren Ruggin and welcome to my channel. On today's video we're going to be doing part 2 of a build a real app. If you're not sure what we're doing, I'll put a card here for the series breakdown. I'll also put episode 1 where we start the project from scratch. It's an Angular Ionic project and we pulled in Material UI. In this video, we're going to get some Sidenavs going. I'm actually going to put 2 Sidenavs because I think that might be useful in one of my designs where I have the primary side nav being the main menu and then a right-hand side nav as well, where I might put some additional information later. So we're going to do 2 Sidenavs and then a button click, which might trigger one. So if that interests you, you can follow along with me. Welcome back. As I was mentioning just in the intro, if you hit my YouTube channel, you will see, this is my YouTube channel, subscribe and likes would be appreciated. Share my knowledge with the rest of YouTube. I hope to help people release apps on the internet. So I've done here this prototypical app. So if you're thinking about an app idea and you haven't started, maybe you should start here with pen and a piece of paper because it's much easier to play with your ideas while it's still paper before you get to code. And if you look roughly, you can see I've got sort of designs and then I've got screens, as you can see, and then they get attached and we actually get to play with it on device. So check that out if you're interested. I'll put a link up in the card, up there. I'll get these pointing right one of these days. Up there, right up the top of the green screen ends here. Anyway, let's get into it. So to recap, at the end of this video here, which was the Let's Build Real, we have the app that you see here. So we have the app module and we have imported the Material UI, one large module that imports everything else just to make life a little bit easier. And then we have a home page where we've copied in a slider and a card, and we will run this now, and this will be where we left off at the end of the last video. Okay, and the app has started. So as we can see, this was the app. This is like on a web, so we might use the Chrome inspector here and change it to an iPhone to give us an idea what that would look like. Here is the material slider that we added, and here is the card with a couple of buttons at the bottom. And if we jump back over here, you'll see that that is the exact card example, which is here from the Angular Material UI component. So I've literally copied this from one of the examples, this exact card here. Oh, I missed that bit. But I copied the rest of it over. And that's what we're gonna do. Today, what we really wanna do is bring in some Sidenavs. So as you can see, Sidenavs is a very common design, especially if you've got a web and a mobile. So if you're gonna try to deploy in both, a lot of times you'll have a drawer content which is off screen on a mobile, but when we move to a web or an iPad and landscape, we'll move that out so that's fully visible, and that gives us a better visual as the main content is not getting as stretched. That we may also do that with some others, and as you can see here, this actually supports two different examples, and it has a few different modes as well. So we have a slide mode where it pushes it over. We have an over mode, as you can see, where it goes over the top, and we also have a push. And the push is slightly different to the slide. The animation is slightly different, and whether or not it should have a drop. We can also affect the opening and closing, and this can all be bound to variables, and it can also be triggered from another part. I like to have menus that can be triggered not only from a user click, but bound to like an event bus, especially if I want to pass information. I might use that one on the right hand side for additional content, especially if I'm trying to do, in one of my designs, if you've seen the prototyping, you'll see I've got one where I've got a search results on a map, and you've got a bunch of pins. So when you click that pin, I'm going to pull that right slide menu out with a more detailed view, like a summary, rather than leaving that map view, so you can actually find the one you're looking for, because going backwards and forwards to a map and then refinding and then researching and then clicking on the wrong pin, that's actually a painful user experience. So what I'm trying to do is give a better user experience by having more information pop over on the right, and there's too much information for a pop-up above a pin on a map. When you click it, sometimes you see a little pop-up, but I think there's too much information for that view, so I'm going to push it out over to the right, because the imagery of those geo assets is actually very beneficial. So that's the plan for today. Let's jump in. And because I want to do this across the app itself, I actually want to do this in the main app. So as you can see in the app content, this is the top level component for the application. And as you can see, it just defines the application, and then it says it's a writer. So as you can see here, the Ion writer, the Ion app, that's actually for Ionic. So we just go to the Ionic Framework, there. You will see this is a framework which is targeted for iOS and Android and PWA, Progressive Web Apps. So that's for the website, and we're using this functionality because we're going to go on capacitor. So having some of the Ionic stuff may be beneficial in the future. Anyway, Ionic using Angular, that's the stack. And that's why you might see these differently. Okay, so let's jump back to the side nav. We've had a bit of a look at some of these. There's the API. Here's some of the examples. A lot of these examples you'll actually have to flip out to somewhere else, but let's say implicit content with 2 sidebars. Okay, so let's go to Stack Blitz. It actually won't work in this browser because it's Brave and I haven't put a security thing in for this. So let's copy this and get Chrome. Oh, there we go. I still have it here. Even better. There we go. All right, so this example is very useful because we can see and we can play with it and then determine how we want to bring it into our own application. Okay, start. Come on. God, I hate waiting. I really do. I'm so impatient these days. So as you can see here, static content on the left, implicit content on the right, and static content. So we have a look here. Here's just the basic component. You can see it's just got the default selector, which tells us the tags. So that's like this thing here. So when you see this HTML, how do you know what that is? That is the selector here. Then it says what is my HTML and what is my styling. So they're externalized as files. They could also be defined in here if we really wanted, but this general process is that we put these outside. And then it has this should run, where it's trying to determine whether or not it's on Stack Blitz. So if it's not on Stack Blitz, this will not be set to true. So let's jump into the HTML. As we can see, it just says if it shouldn't run, please open up. So as we've seen it on the website, in the Angular UI component website, it isn't running, so it tells you to go to Stack Blitz, which we're on. So let's just grab this container and come to our code. And what we want to do is we want to have a left side nav and we want to have a right side nav, and then we want the center not to have the text implicit main content, but to be the place where we render our different pages. Okay, so that's why I've replaced this implicit main content with a Ion writer. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of implicit write, so let's jump back to the side nav and look at the API. Or maybe another example. I don't actually want it to be explicit. I want it to be, I don't want it to be implicit, I want it to be explicit. So when I come back and have a look at it another day, it will look right. Okay, so let's have a look here on the HTML. There's the button, there's the drawer, content, side nav content, fixed, implicit, responsive. What's going on in the responsive? Okay, here we go, side nav content. All right, that's the tag I'm looking for. And then back to our code here. So I want our content to be here, and I want the writer to be in the explicit content. Now you don't have to do this. I just prefer it because I think it's more readable and you're less likely to make a mistake when it's more explicit. So this is the example container. So let's call this the app side nav container, and this should run is not relevant for us. So I'll get rid of that. So I'm saying inside my application, I want a side nav container, which is the entire thing. Then I want a side nav mode, slide, and position and. So let's just put this other position to be explicit. Position equals start. And then we have the different modes, and then we have opened. So let's just get that going. Now, we probably won't see anything yet because we will need to do some styling. So let's come over here and have a look at what the styling is like. Example container 00. All right, well, let's just take that styling to start with. And then we will change it because I changed the class name. So the class is now called app side nav container. Update the class for the styling and save. All right, so you should recompile now. And let's jump over here and see what it looks like. There we go. So I now have a side menu on the left, a side menu on the right, and then the content in the middle, which is great. So that's the content that we've already done. And then we have both open. Do we really want both open? Probably not. So let's go back and have a look at the binding for the controls. Because as you can see in this HTML, we've actually just set it to be opened. Okay, so we are going to change this. Let's just have a quick look in here. Flex, okay, it's a little bit different. Sidebar, nav. Sidebar's not fixed or stretch. Okay, well, we'll come back to some of that styling another day. I'll not get too involved in the styling today. In content 2, basic side nav. Side nav, open and close behavior. Let's have a look at that. View code. Okay, so on the HTML, as you can see here, they have a named side nav. So I'm going to do it as well because I like to have this reference, which we'll use at another point. So I shall call this start side nav and side nav. Okay. Then as you can see here, we have opened, which is just defined here, which is basically saying the equivalent to true. But what this is going to do is it's actually going to do binded. So it's going to bind this to a variable named this name. So if I take this over and replace that with this, it's now saying that this opened parameter on this component is going to be bind to this open field. Now this doesn't exist yet, so we'll need to jump into the component itself, and let's define opened to be let's say true, because we want it to be opened on default, do we? And I might change that to be start nav opened, and then what we might do is do end nav opened equals false. Okay, so now if I come in here, come back, bind this opened, and I shall bind this one to be false. So now if we come back to here, we should see that this one is open and this one is closed, which is exactly what I expected due to the binding being correct. Now what I will do is I'll actually change this mode and I'll move it out as a parameter as well. Mostly because we may want to change that mode depending on device or device size. So in the future, I expect to potentially have this come over the top, but then on a bigger screen, I might want that pushed out and always visible. So that mode might change from over to side. So let's go back to our app component, and I will do start nav mode equals let's say side, and I shall say end nav mode equals push. Now we went through this, I think I showed you this a moment ago, but there's an example up here with so we have a side which does this, push in, and then we have an over which goes over the top. So the one on the right will probably push over the top, where the one on the left is more of a menu which will be used much more frequently, and the one on the right will only get used occasionally. So I've got those set. I'll bind that back up, and because this is like a two-way binding, that will also, so if this is opened through another interaction, it will the square bracket says take the incoming, and the normal brackets says the outgoing. So this should be mode, because this is only really incoming. The mode shouldn't really change. So this binding is not coming back out of the component. That mode shouldn't change from a component, but the open state will do because of interactions on that component, which is why this has got two-way binding and this has only got one-way binding. So data in, and this is data in and data out. Okay, so let's jump over here. So yeah, that looks a bit better. Okay, so let's actually set this to open, so I can just show that that's actually correct. True, auto reload, and boom. As you can see, this is here. So this is saying whether or not there should be a backdrop. I'm actually going to turn the backdrop off for now. So I'm going to say container nav container backdrop equals false, and if I remember correctly, we bind that up here to has backdrop. Oh, I haven't got my IntelliSense on this computer working. Okay, I'm gonna have to come back. Has backdrop. Now that should fail in the console if there was a problem. No, and as you can see, there's no backdrop. You can see this is a push. There's a slight variation here, where you can show that that's over. It doesn't look 100% correct. That should actually be over to the side, but we'll sort that out later. So we do have, I don't really want a backdrop, so I think that will be fine for now. We can always modify that later if we like. Now, as you can see here, we actually have content right here. In the future, I could move that out, but for now, let's just put a little bit of content in here. It makes it look more realistic. So normally this is some sort of menu system. You have your branding on top, and then a list of stuff, to the primary access of your app. So that's normally a list of some description. So let's come to the list. Here's a basic list, and then we have all different lists, action lists. So you can go in, there's a lot more there, but we just want a basic list for this. So a basic list is fine. So let's take this basic list, and we shall put the basic list in here. Boom. Salt, pepper, that is fine. Let's just have a look at what that looks like. So you can see that's fine. We have these. We may want to increase the size of these. Let's have a look. Inspect. So this is a side nav bar. I think it should say side. Yep. Nav bar side. And should it say start? Alright, nav, side nav, and then if I look at this one, inspect. So if I style them separately, I want to know which one's which. So this says map drawer and that says map drawer side. Okay, so let's do map drawer side, and if we come to our styling, let's put some styling in here. It's not perfect styling, let's just be clear, but we might say width equals let's say 25%. Okay, and then this one is the map drawer and we'll do that one, and we'll just do, say, padding 10 pixels, just put a little bit of spacing, and we'll do the same here, padding 10 pixels, 10 pixels, and see what that looks like. Boom. So as you can see, there's a little bit of padding now. It's not up against each side, and then the end content is also there. That does not look like it's 25%. Oh, what if I make it 55%? Oh, okay. I'll leave it at 55 for now, but we'll change these dynamically through the application by probably applying a different class, which will then take different ones. So I've done 55. It doesn't really make sense if it's not a mobile, but primarily we'll look for mobile and then we'll have a look at web. I like to do mobile first, as most people are now accessing websites on their phone, and the use case for this is primary on the move, which is going to be mobile web first, even though the desktop, I want to click it on desktop too, but we'll get to there later. As you can see, this is going to be a side nav, and this is basically going to be an additional nav. If I click, oh yeah, it's not turning off because I don't have I've got the backdrop turned off, so it does not auto close. Okay, so that means that the next step is to put some behavior on these menus to make them come and go. Now, that can be relatively straightforward. We can put some buttons to open and close some stuff. We have some buttons here on the main one, so we might bind to there. And sometimes you'll take like a button here, and I want to put this detail, as we were mentioning, with this right tab. So to do that, I want this component to be able to talk to this component. And the way I normally would do that is on this particular page that I will then use an event bus. So I think we're going to pause the video there. We've done a side nav, we've brought in a left and a right side nav, and we then have our main component, which is the piece which is going to be changed as you navigate through the web. We'll do that in a little bit more videos, but the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in a service which allows a decoupled mechanism that we can send events and communicate to those side navs from other places within inside the application. So if that interests you, join me on the next episode. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you find this valuable. Have a great day. Ciao. Can I launch products on the internet that make money? You'll have to follow me to find out. Then hit the subscribe button and join me on my journey.